Welcome back to Above the Clouds, the podcast where we explore the latest trends and innovations in cloud technology. I'm your host, Daniel Humphreys, head of Cloud UK at Lawrence Harvey, and today we're excited to welcome Tim Busfield to the show. Tim is the data engineering manager for Jaguar Land Rover, where he leads the team responsible for managing and processing the vast amounts of data generated by the world-renowned automotive brand. In today's episode, we'll be discussing the fascinating world of data engineering, from the challenges of managing data at scale to the latest trends in data analytics and machine learning. So thanks for joining us, Tim. How are you doing?
I'm really good, thanks. Yeah, and you?
Yes, yeah, very well, very well. Very excited to learn a little bit about yourself and JLR. To start things off, could you tell our listeners a little bit about your background and what you're currently working on?
Sure. So I, as you mentioned, I'm data engineering manager, specifically within the digital product creation team. So we build all sorts of data products for the business. We work in cross-functional teams, so we have data engineers and intelligent automation, analytics, data science, all kind of working together on products that help the business make better decisions, enable sort of an unearth insight and kind of optimize the way that we work as well.
Is that sort of like business-driven decisions, or decisions for customers and making their experience better, or a mix of the two? Where does it sort of lie?
Mix of the two, yeah. So some of what we build helps with making the right things available for our customers, and also kind of understanding our customers better, providing them more relevant messaging. But then also a lot of the focus is on internal operations, our interactions with our suppliers, with our partners, etc. So yeah, a real range.
Is this a pathway that Jaguar Land Rover have been on for quite some time now, or we're sort of, what sort of stage are you guys in that journey of understanding your data and making those decisions from it?
I think we've come a long way. We've had some real successes, but I think for a business of this size and this age, we've also got some legacy stuff as well. There's a real range where we kind of run the gamut from cutting edge, being in the cloud, using the newest and the most exciting tools, but then also having some kind of legacy estate and we have to kind of work through that, so that at the same time we've got migrations going on from on-prem to the cloud, but we're also got other things that are well up and running in the cloud. So yeah, it's a range of progress, but I think we there's still a lot for us to go after, even though we've had a lot of successes.
Yeah, I mean, within your role, how do you see the role of data evolving in the automotive industry specifically, and from a JLR perspective over the next few years?
I think addressing some of that legacy will help us, and also giving us better connections and interactions with our suppliers, with our dealers. There's kind of a whole sort of network around us as a business, and I think we are really focusing on some of those interactions. So building the right APIs and accessing the right APIs that our suppliers are providing, accessing more external data that tells us information about the market that we're operating in. Yeah, so that's the focus, I think, as well, is kind of going beyond our internal data, also looking at our connectivity and the information we're sharing with others.
Is there any bits of data that have really sort of stuck out to you, maybe even like raised an eyebrow, and you think, bloody hell, didn't think that would come to fruition, but the data's there?
I think we one of the things that we worked on for a while was understanding just the wider market in terms of which vehicles were selling. So accessing that global data took a long time. We spoke to different suppliers of data. There's a whole sort of industry out there now of kind of scraping and bringing together data for investors specifically, but more broadly for businesses. So accessing better information around market conditions, not just for our cars, but for our competitor cars, I think has been quite interesting.
Yeah, you've got to know what you're up against as well, haven't you? So yeah, for sure. I mean, speaking specifically around JLR, Jaguar Land Rover, and what they've been known for as innovation and design, for quite some time. How do you think data engineering and analytics plays a role in this? And how do you see these fields evolving in the near future?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, because the designers are their own club in a way. They speak their own language, and they draw inspiration from all sorts of areas that I think as a customer you might not even realize. And so I think there's been a real kind of, and tech's been a real enabler for them in terms of being able to generate 3D models, generate kind of holographic images, be able to really visualize in a much better way what the design of a car is gonna look like, how it's gonna feel. So it'll be interesting. I think one of the things is that you're trying to design for a person, for a customer, capturing more data about those people, about the way that they interact with the car, the way that they interact with the vehicle whilst they're using it and whilst it's stationary. All of that can then provide a really rich source of data the designers can use to kind of test some of the assumptions they make about the way that people use their vehicle. So yeah, I think data is an enabler, and that being able to like I say, capture that information, could provide really good kind of insights to designers to kind of test some of the things that they assume, and some of the kind of conceptualizations they have of our owners.
I like the way you put it that way, that it's an enabler, because from an outside perspective, in a way, you sort of got the sort of two opposite worlds, the two polar opposites, in the sort of the analytical mindset and the creative mindset. And the designers are all obviously artists in a way, especially when you look at sort of the history of Jaguar, the E-Type, and dating all the way back to those beautiful cars then, and the generation after generation Jaguar has been able to deliver. And then you've got the sort of mindset of the analytical data scientist and engineer, and using that data to then sort of marry the two mindsets together to then come up with something which is both beautiful and practical. I think it's just such a powerful way of working.
It's the small details, where data can potentially have an impact. Those small insights that you get into the way, even things like the positioning of the USB ports in a vehicle, or those kind of small touches that make it more usable, make
the click of a seatbelt.
Or if you're taking your Defender off-road, understanding what sort of activities people might be doing afterwards, and therefore what accessories are they using, and how can the vehicle better support the different use cases if they're taking it off-roading, if they're taking it out into the countryside for fishing or for
Is it the
camping.
perfect height for a picnic camper?
Well, yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah, exactly. But those
Excellent.
small details, I think you can enable. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Something that I saw quite recently that Jaguar Land Rover announced was the creation of new engineering hubs aimed at developing next generation autonomous technologies. Can you tell us a bit more about either your role in that or the initiative and some exciting developments that we can expect to see on from that field?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm personally not working in within those hubs at the moment, but I mean, I remember when it was announced that we were going to have this partnership with NVIDIA, and so NVIDIA are the partner for those hubs,
and very much a leader in the space at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought that was really exciting and also very, very smart, because to be able to build up that expertise internally takes a long time, takes a lot of investment. So to partner with a company like NVIDIA really accelerates kind of us getting to where we want to be. And the nice thing as well is that it feels like a true partnership. It's not, our engagement with them isn't just around delivering the thing that they're on the hook for delivering. We're actually spending time with each other, our data science teams and their data science teams sharing knowledge. So it's felt like a really beneficial thing already, even though there's still a lot more to come.
Fantastic. Exciting stuff. Very interested to see what comes out of that. Can you walk us through a typical day in your role then at JLR and some of the key challenges you may face, and some of the exciting successes that you may face on a day-to-day as a data engineering manager for Jaguar Land Rover?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned before, we're within the digital product creation team. So as a sort of a wider team, each year we talk to different parts of the business, and we actually have a target in terms of this is the value that we aim to deliver for the business. So that might be in increased profits or cost savings. So we're talking to different parts of the business about where the opportunities are, about what a product that's going to solve a problem would look like. And that's really, we've got a product management team that lead the way on that. So then my role comes in a bit later. I'm kind of linked to a few different projects along with other members of the data engineering team, and we're then kind of building out the pipelines that support those products. At the same time, we're talking to the analytics team about the dashboard that they might build and making sure that we're providing the data in the right way. We're talking to the data science team about the features that they need for their machine learning model, the cleaning that they want to apply. And then we'll also, keep talking to the business, because, requirements capture is hard, and we'd love to get all the information we need up front, but that's not really the reality. So there's a sort of an ongoing conversation around making sure that we've got the right understanding, we've got the right data sources, that we're applying the right treatment to those data sources, because if you work in too siloed a way, you can be accessing this data without really realizing how it's being generated and some of the nuances of how it's being generated. So yeah, that's the day-to-day is kind of focused on the projects, but also on the people, within our team as well. So we have a range, of individuals within our team, from, really experienced data engineers through to grads and apprentices that we're trying to spend a bit more time with and invest in. And we also have, for the last few years, run a conversion course. So taking people from other parts of the business and actually putting them through a bit of a boot camp where they learn some Python, some SQL, Git, a few other things. And then they join our team as data engineers. And it's a bit of a bumpy landing for them, I think, because they whilst they're really experienced in professional terms and they know the business really well, they're sort of dropped into this brand new role. So yeah, then it's a part of it is making sure we're giving them the right support giving them room to fail and learn through failure and not feel like that's a problem. But also at the same time, giving them the right support, the right follow-up training.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's really cool to hear. Well, I think it's time for the main segment of the show. So this is the where we move on to the above the clouds rating. So for those who are listening at home and are new to Above the Clouds, Tim will be picking out 3 topics from our magical cloud themed hat that is off screen here. And he'll give each topic a rating out of 10 based on how innovative and relevant he thinks it is to the cloud industry at this time. So a score out of 10 means it's a game-changing topic. It's true innovation in the cloud. It is ergo above the clouds. 5 out of 10 would be, yeah, it's cloud. It's data technology, but it's nothing new. And then while a score of 1 would mean it's pretty irrelevant and outdated, not worth the hype, and even a load of bull. So to start us off, first topic, let's have a quick look. And very on topic, AI. So Tim,
great.
AI, what does that mean to you?
What does it mean to me? I mean, I work in data engineering now, but previously I worked as a data scientist at Rolls-Royce. So that was my kind of real introduction to AI, although I had done a small amount of optimization before that. So my career has kind of been always in the kind of tech data space, but working quite a lot with AI, either directly or indirectly. I think it's in terms of what it means to me, I think it's hugely exciting. I guess having been in working within the domain, I've kind of rode out this the hype cycle. I don't know exactly where we are. We're probably at all stages of the hype cycle around different types of AI, but there was obviously huge excitement going back a few years about what we could achieve. And I think a lot of those hopes are yet to be realized. But I think there are some really exciting products out there. I mean, I've kind of outsourced my music taste, decisions to Spotify. So if you ask me which bands I'm listening to, I don't know which bands I like, but Spotify knows. And there are some really amazing products that just wouldn't stand up, without AI. But there's still a lot more to come. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. From an automotive industry perspective, is there any exciting and promising applications that you've come across or seen?
Well, I think the one that everyone's aware of is self-driving vehicles, which people have been working on for quite a while now. Obviously, Tesla spearheaded a lot of that, but now every automotive company is looking at self-driving cars.
He made that open source recently, didn't he?
Did they?
I believe so. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe don't hold me to that. But I thought I read somewhere that he made that open source, Elon.
Yeah, he definitely open sourced quite a lot of tech. Going back quite a few years ago, yeah, he's done that progressively over the years. I think open sourced a lot of a lot of their technology. But I think now individual automotive companies are kind of working on their own solutions, and at the same time there are a lot of startups looking at the same thing. But then beyond that, there are other kind of interesting applications around kind of inside the car as well. And then there's also just the potential, I think, for AI to kind of transform the businesses that are producing the cars as well.
Yeah. Can you give us any examples of how AI is currently being used at JLR, either to incorporate into vehicles potentially, or tools that you're using to enable your day-to-day to be easier, or enable that decision-making capability?
Yes, I can tell you about one example, which is which some other people in my team have been working on for a while actually, which is our recommended order bank. So we have dealers all over the globe, and we also have an incredible amount of kind of options and configurations that you can apply to our vehicles. There's a lot of customization that people can elect to do. And our dealers were typically they would kind of choose, a selection of vehicles based on experience or based on just choosing the same as what they'd chosen before. And we, as an organization, decided we wanted to apply a bit more kind of intelligence and a bit more support to them in making that decision, so that we were supplying them with the vehicles that they were going to be able to sell, more quickly, because they don't want vehicles sat on the forecourt. And I think one of the key kind of insights that's come out of that kind of generally across the board is that it doesn't pay to choose the cheaper kind of options, because we're offering a premium product. People don't really then want the lowest end of that premium product, and so it might feel safer to go for a lower cost, lower ticket price item, but actually it may not sell as quickly. So that was one of the key insights. But then we're also, there's a lot more customization into the recommendations we're making. We're looking at the areas of the world that people are operating in, the types of climate, there's all sorts of kind of geographic and kind of human sort of factors that we're feeding into this model in order to kind of generate a really good recommendation for the vehicles that they should order. And we've seen a lot of success with that. We've seen a lot of uptake, around those recommendations, and then reported increases in sort of time to sell. So
yeah, fantastic. I mean, that's one that's definitely an advantage for sure. Do you think that AI will impact the overall performance and functionality of vehicles, in the near future, outside of, autonomous? Do you think be able to, influence braking speeds and that more engineering side of the vehicles?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely scope for that, I think. I mean, people are already, some people have kind of dashboard monitors, don't they, around their driving style. And I think there's definitely scope for vehicles to kind of feed more information to people about the way that their driving style is using fuel or electricity. And then in terms of kind of vehicle performance, yeah, absolutely. I think there's definitely scope for kind of fine tuning the way that that the internals are running as well. But I think we've already seen some of that. I mean, in terms of vehicle efficiency, it's vastly improved, even recently. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's about trying to understand as well, exactly what people do and don't want to hear. So you don't want your vehicle to be nagging them. You don't want to give advice that people don't want. But if people are interested, then I think there's definitely scope for making that sort of information available.
Do you think we'll see, incorporation of that sort of NLP, natural language processing tools, and generative AI in like ChatGPT into vehicles soon?
Yeah, I think we will. I mean, there was a lot of excitement a few years ago around voice agents like Alexa and then the other competitors. A lot of people had them in their homes. I don't have any stats, but just colloquially and get the feeling that, some of that excitement might have died off because people kind of hit the limitations of what a voice agent could and couldn't do. I think LLMs, offer the opportunity for those voice agents to really improve in the scope and range of things that they can do. I mean, I would, as a vehicle user, I would love to, to have kind of a more nuanced conversation with my vehicle.
Get it to pay that parking ticket.
Well, yeah, or if you imagine you're on a long drive, you might want to say to it something like, "Oh, well, I fancy this type of food.
Yeah.
I don't want to add more than 30 minutes onto my journey, but given the vehicle knows where you're planning to go, can you find me somewhere that's 4 stars or above, and it's not going to add more than 30 minutes onto my drive."
Yeah. Can you avoid Stonehenge for me? Because otherwise I'll be stuck in traffic for 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, you've got to make sure it's not distracting and that it's safe. So you have to make sure that. But yeah, I mean, I love the idea that these voice agents become a bit like a kind of a concierge for, given that we are aiming at that to deliver a modern luxury experience to our customers, to have the vehicle provide, just that extra level of service and of, taking away some of the mundane tasks that you might do as a traveler, or as a driver.
Do you have a favorite fictional AI like Jarvis from MCU, or any sort of TV show or video game?
Yeah,
Cortana's always was a favorite from the Halo games back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, they're often quite they're a bit malevolent sometimes, aren't they, AIs? But some of them are nice. I think, might be showing my age, but maybe Holly from Red Dwarf.
Oh yeah,
quite like Holly. It's quite funny, and I think as well it sort of shows a bit more it's not realistic, but he's and later she was not perfect, and I think AI is not perfect, and often in fiction it's shown as incredibly sort of polished, and I think it's quite nice to see fictional representations of AI that show that they're not perfect, that they do degrade and they do make mistakes.
If you could create one yourself, either for Jaguar Land Rover vehicles or something else, what features would it have?
Good question. I think so. My background in data science when I was at Rolls-Royce was in predictive maintenance. So it was about taking data from, in that case, an aero engine, and using that data to predict when that engine needed some sort of maintenance and what kind of maintenance. So I really like the idea of our vehicles monitoring themselves, identifying when there might be an issue, and then going beyond that, and if everything's if you've got some really kind of connected AI, then it could then book an appointment at the garage for you, and when you get there, it could provide the mechanic with, well, this is why some diagnostics, exactly, and some educated guesses around what the issue might be, and it saves you trying to have to replicate the noise that you think your car's making. I've tried and failed that a couple of times.
Carl, what noise are you making? Yeah, that one.
So, but yeah, again, I think just part of the excitement around AI is just the idea that it can take care of these things that we don't want to have to worry about, and do some of this stuff better than we can, and to kind of free us up to enjoy life and to focus on other things.
finish us off on AI. Do you have is there a sort of a voice in mind or yeah, who would voice your AI if you had the choice? Was it Samuel Jackson, Samuel S. Jackson, or L. Jackson even did Alexa? I saw that a few years back. But yeah, any favorites?
No, do you know what? I haven't used any of those voice AIs too much. I've used Google Assistant, but yeah, no.
I always thought Michael Palin might be quite a good.
Oh yeah,
good
that'd be
one.
nice. Yeah. Yeah, you want something quite soothing, don't you? You want someone with a nice voice so that it kind of keeps you calm when it doesn't quite understand.
Or maybe some sort of famous butler, like Ask Jeeves or something, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, it brings us to the rating for AI. I think we sort of know which way this is going to go, but yeah, let's put some scores on the doors. First rating of the day, AI. How does it stack up in the clouds? How high up in the clouds are we?
Well, I'll give it maybe an 8 out of 10 to show that, I mean, it's not going anywhere, and it's already, you know, delivered a lot, but there's still a long way to go. So in terms of, you know, its applicability to the cloud and it's yeah, it's right up there. It's right up there.
Excellent. Fantastic. Wonderful stuff. Let's get on to topic number 2. So, got here. Multi-cloud, sir.
Okay.
So, multi-cloud as a data engineering manager. What do we think of multi-cloud? Are you a fan?
I guess I'm an open-minded skeptic. So I think, you know, within organizations, different people have different priorities. As someone who's trying to get stuff done or managing people who are trying to get stuff done, single cloud provides a lot. You know, we get a lot of benefit from our cloud provider, from the integrations that they supply within their own, you know, different offerings, from working within the kind of security, you know, bubble or layer that they provide. However, you know, there are risks and there are kind of limitations, I guess, to using a single cloud provider, which have to be weighed against the benefits of being able to kind of get stuff done with single cloud. So it's something that I'm kind of asking a lot of questions about at the moment. So
sounds pretty fancy, doesn't it? Multi-cloud.
Yeah.
You know, you think it's a bit of a big deal, you know, using more than one provider? It could be shopping around for the best deal sort of thing going on there, or?
Yeah, I think some organizations end up there by accident. You know, if they're big enough, they, you know, people start different POCs or they start different, you know, endeavors, and maybe one part of an organization selects one cloud provider, another one selects another. So you can end up in a kind of multi-cloud, or maybe not true multi-cloud, but having multiple cloud providers kind of by accident. Yeah. And then you sort of don't need to kind of think, okay, well, at some point, does this make sense? And I think for other people, it's really about trying to avoid vendor lock-in. Yeah. So people are concerned about the size and the power and the influence that you know, one provider, one supplier might have over them. You know, obviously they you sign agreements with these companies, but then you have to renew them every few years, and so people, I think, want to hedge some of that risk around them being able to put the prices up too much. I don't know how realistic that concern is. I don't know, if that's something that's happened in the past and that's where that fears come from, or whether it's just a risk that people have identified. Yeah, it's I think that's the big driver. When I was working in my previous role for a SaaS company, we had to confront multi-cloud because we were trying to sell our solution to different companies, and one company might want you to deploy the solution into Azure, someone else might want you to deploy it into AWS, not normally because they've got a huge preference, but because their IT security have done the legwork, done the analysis of a particular cloud provider, and it makes it easier to then get that your offering through.
Yeah, get that foot in the door.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think for a SaaS company, you have to kind of confront multi-cloud, but for a business who are just looking to use it for internal purposes, or for kind of B2C type applications, then it's really about I think thinking through why you want multi-cloud and what the and where to apply it, and then what the kind of the impact of that is as well.
Are there any best practices that companies should follow when sort of approaching that decision, you think, and multi-cloud in general?
I think it's I think the different parts of the business need to talk to each other and understand the kind of implications either way. I think there's a bit of a tension between there's been this move towards managed services and serverless, and so people are trying to build stuff, want to build on using components where they don't have to worry about the management overhead of those underlying components that they just provided to them as a service. But if you go down that route with your single cloud provider, then that stops you kind of then going multi-cloud, and then you're kind of faced with a decision of, well, if we do want to support multi-cloud, then we could go to a third party. We could, instead of taking this offering from our cloud provider, let's take a similar or potentially better offering from a third party who can deploy it to AWS, they can deploy it to Azure, deploy it to GCP. And so if we need to change, our underlying cloud provider, then they can make that easier. But then you've now got an agreement with that third party. You've moved from lock-in to cloud provider to lock-in to a third party. So I think, to come back to your question, I think in terms of best practices, I think it's understanding where you need multi-cloud, where is something so critical that you need to have some fallback from one cloud provider to another, because there are outages sometimes for a given cloud provider. So where is something so critical that you need multi-cloud, and then you have to accept building that thing in sort of a cloud agnostic way as possible, so that you can deploy it across clouds. But then at the same time, identifying the things that maybe aren't so critical, where you can take the risk that actually we'll just deploy this to a single cloud, and we'll take the benefits that cloud provider provides, and because these things are valuable, but if they have to go down for a while, then that's that risk is makes sense when weighed against the overall benefit they're providing.
Do you think data engineering and data science benefits from multi-cloud specifically?
Well, I think all of the different cloud providers are trying to push and improve their different offerings around data engineering and data science, and it's a differentiator, I think, for for some of them. You know, they provide different tools. I mean, because sometimes you hear people say that the cloud providers are all the same, and they're all similar, but they do have important differences when it comes down to actually using these, using their offerings. So, yeah, I think it's definitely an area where they're doing a lot of product enhancement, around the underlying database sort of infrastructure that they've got for supporting data engineering and data science, around the way that the tools they've got for actually building your pipelines, for orchestrating them, and the offerings around kind of deploying and managing, machine learning models as well. So I think, so like I say, it does make a difference, which cloud provider you go with in terms of what you can and can't do.
Do you have a personal preference to enable your own role?
So as a team, we are building sort of generally ELT pipelines. We're using BigQuery, we're using Airflow and GCP's managed deploy sort of offering around Airflow called Composer. So that's kind of what we use at the moment. In the past, I've used more of Azure's tooling, yeah. So I don't have a preference necessarily. It's more, I think it's more around as a team, understanding the types of workloads or the types of things you're trying to achieve, and then picking the right stack and the right tools, and then you can kind of start to see who's strongest around that particular stack. I don't think there's one cloud provider that's kind of strongest across the board.
Sure. Especially between like the big three, AWS, Azure, and GCP, they all do very similar things at the end of the day. It's just different bells and whistles and colors and names, for the same functions. But it's is it something that you think is the future of cloud? Do you think it's gonna be something that more and more organizations from the enterprise level down to the startup level, that will be adopting? Or is it only from one end of the industry that really needs to utilize that type? Because I know there's regulated industries that obviously see benefits in multi-cloud, and there's actually rules and regulations in place that require them to have multi-cloud. But sort of outside of those specific industry cases, in a more general term, do you think it's something that we'll see more of an adoption of?
I think a lot of organizations are looking at multi-cloud, but I think a lot of them haven't quite decided and understood why and to what extent yet. So I think you're likely to see some of them carry on that journey and find some kind of multi-cloud solution that works for them. And I think for others, they'll go down the route of looking at multi-cloud and then eventually decide actually the costs outweigh the benefits. Or like I say, they'll choose a kind of subsection of the things that they do where they really need multi-cloud, and then the others they'll sort of, I think, try and retain that the operational efficiency of just being able to do things on single cloud.
Would you agree that it's generally more expensive than sticking to one?
Yeah, I think it is. I think there are all different costs associated with it. There's the fact that you're entering into agreements with multi-cloud providers, and you're probably not getting the economies of scale. There's the internal costs of having people who are familiar with not just one cloud provider, but with a range. So there's the training costs, the hiring costs. Just maintaining that knowledge within the team. And then I think there's the added kind of security costs as well, just to it makes life easier if you're working within a single cloud provider. You've got that layer when you're trying to build things that are interfacing with with different cloud providers, then you have to take a bit more ownership of that security side of things, and that can add a lot more cost as well, I think.
Okay, yeah, no, fair enough.
I mean, the benefits are, though, as you know, there are
It's
smaller
always two sides to a coin, right?
Yeah, there are smaller cloud providers out there who offer, you know, very competitively priced kind of blob storage and file storage. So there are probably in some cases savings to go after, and if you sort of fine tune the way that you're building and using different offerings from different cloud providers, then I think there probably are cost savings to go after as well, and opportunities.
Yeah, it sort of goes back to a discussion we we're having in the previous episode with Ryan Kirk from Formula One, where we talked around reverse cloud, where, you know, as long as you're not rushing into something, and like you say, identifying the why first and then delivering a strategy against that, you're not going to run into the mistakes, the expense, and then therefore, you know, like a lot of people did within the pandemic, just rushed into cloud, not specifically multi-cloud, but cloud in general, and then got burnt in some ways, or, you know, made mistakes. And then there's now a little bit of a backlash in the industry with this term reverse cloud going around. Sort of a similar sort of scenario to that. You know, multi-cloud again is another buzzword in the industry. You know, if you rush into it and make those mistakes, and maybe it is the wrong decision for you, but if you understand the why, and then, you know, deliver against, you know, a well thought out strategy and understanding of that, then you're probably in a good place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So I guess that'll bring us to a rating then. So multi-cloud, where does it land?
I think for me, maybe a 5 out of 10. I think there's merit. I think there's good reason to consider multi-cloud, but I think in a lot of cases, single cloud provider is appropriate. Is you get more benefit, you can build things quicker, and so I'll give it a 5 out of 10.
Thank you very much. All right then. Third and final subject. Let's have a quick look what the cloud has in store for us. So, data literacy.
Okay,
that's a rather unique one that I put in there, a bit of a wild card. What does data literacy mean to you, and how important is it for businesses today?
Yeah, so I think it's very important. I think that, you know, teams like mine and the ones that I've been part of before can achieve a certain amount on their own. You know, there's opportunities to go after, but I think it's critical that organizations as a whole improve their data literacy, because data is being generated and consumed and analyzed across the business. And, you know, teams like the one that I work for certainly aren't trying to take ownership of data. They're trying to provide, you know, useful products, useful things to the rest of the business. I think it is hugely important, because I think there's people are very much kind of self-taught in terms of the way that they use data, the way that they use tooling, and so kind of understanding where people are at, understanding how they are using data, and then trying to kind of provide some guidance around, you know, improving that is critical for businesses.
Do you support what the government was trying to do with fairly recent announcements around making kids and teenagers study maths until, I think it was up to A level or 18 to improve data literacy amongst, you know, the general population? I'm not sure if that's still the plan. I think I'm maybe paraphrasing there a little bit, but I'm pretty sure that was something that they were putting out as a message. And, you know, do you think that could definitely be a good thing for data literacy and as a whole? And
I
Do you think
think
people get behind it as well?
well, I support the intent. I
Yeah.
think, but whether that will have the desired outcomes, I'm not so sure. I think really it would be better to provide some of that once people are into adulthood. I think you hear lots of people talk, post school about, well, I didn't really learn about taxes. I didn't really learn about, making investment decisions. And I think once you're an adult, being able to access that information, around kind of understanding numbers, around understanding statistics, it feels a bit more relevant to your life, and you can kind of relate it to the decisions you're having to make about, do I take a loan out? What's the implications of that for me? So it's so I think I support the intent, but I don't know if it's the best way, I think, of improving that.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that front. Is that something that JLR is doing? You were talking about your grads and the apprentices coming into the business. Is that something that is that something that they start on straight from the off, or do you build them up to it, or do they even come into the business with, do you look for that before they even enter that development?
Well, I think
pathway?
I mean, we have grads who've come from. Some of our graduates have got, PhDs in astrophysics, and others of them have come from more humanities degree background, where they probably have had to do some statistical analysis still, but not not consistently throughout their undergraduate degree. So we have a range of people coming into the business, and specifically to our kind of digital graduate program. Which I think is really important as well, because data is about more than just the numeracy side of things. But and then in terms of other things we're doing, we are running a sort of a data fellowship program, which is kind of, I think, the first cohort coming up to the end, or they're well underway anyway. So that was in partnership with company called Multiverse. So that's different to the thing that I was describing before. Our conversion course is about bringing people actually into the data engineering team, whereas the fellowship is about enabling people who are going to go back to whichever part of the business or role they were in before, but with some additional skills to help them use more appropriate tooling for capturing and transforming and providing data, and for visualizing it as well. So I think, again, they learn some Python, SQL, some Tableau. We've got a really productive kind of partnership with Tableau, and one of our we won a few awards at the Data IQ Awards last year, and one of those was for a lady called Amy Ryder, who really champions the use of Tableau, and not just for its own purpose, but as a kind of a way to really drive kind of some of these data literacy enablement across the business as well. So
for our listeners out there who are potentially maybe at the start of their journey and looking to improve their data literacy skills, is there any one tool or technology do you think that they should really sort of focus on?
Well, I think if you want to do stuff with data, then I would say SQL and Python, and then I think as well, more broadly, I think so Python, because it's a great programming language to learn as your first programming language, and once you've learned Python, you can do so many different things with it. SQL, specific to getting data out of databases and SQL databases and transforming data, and SQL, even though every few years people say it's dead, it's kind of it's the foundations of a lot of even very modern databases use some variant of SQL. So those are two things to really invest in, I would say.
Excellent.
And then just more widely, I think one of the critical things that we, when you think about data literacy, you're trying to kind of get people to understand is when Excel is appropriate and when it isn't. So I think one of the things we have to be careful about is demonizing people or being a bit snooty about their use of Excel, because that's what people are doing incredible things with Excel, with macros, with VBA, because that's the tool they've got available to them. But I think part of a data literacy kind of agenda for an organization should be about, well, firstly, giving them some acknowledgement and praise for what they've managed to achieve with tools that aren't optimal, and then understanding why Excel, isn't necessarily the right thing to use for some of what they're doing, and then introducing them to the right, different tools, different options, probably cloud based, and yeah, I think giving them that understanding, and then kind of enabling them to go and use something more appropriate.
For sure. I mean, what is also a brilliant, as much as Excel is obviously limited for trying to doing, certain things that you're probably up to, which I have no concept of. It's definitely a great gateway, for someone like myself who doesn't have an idea of those larger functions, to start, boiling down data and coming up with some insights and just from even a small set of data. So great tool. Is there any common misconceptions around data literacy that you know of, and how can they be addressed?
I think there's kind of two conflicting misconceptions in a way. I think sometimes people think, data literacy, they kind of rule themselves out of that. Maybe that sounds a bit too hard or a bit, outside of what they do. Or they think, well, that doesn't apply to me. I know what I'm doing. And I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. I think people, across organizations, they know their data, or they know their domain very well. And so they have an understanding of the data that, someone like myself wouldn't, because they know how it's being generated, they know what it means to different people. But it's just about treating it the right way. And I think another kind of misconception is that data literacy is just about what you do when you get the data. I think a really key part of it, certainly from the perspective of a data engineer, is about the people who are generating that data. A lot of data gets generated by human activity, by people entering information into systems, and they are maybe disconnected from what happens with that data, when it arrives, all the way through to a dashboard. I think there's a kind of a big part of data literacy agenda should be about just making people aware of the part they're playing in generating that data that's potentially very valuable, but also potentially kind of useless or misleading if it's not handled in the right way, not governed in the right way, and not entered properly. So it's broader than just how to analyze data or statistics. It's more around just how, as an organization, should we be treating data, and what part does everyone play in that?
We talk a lot about data literacy, and people coming up to speed with the lingo and the terms that the industry uses and the specialists use. Do you think there's a role to play from the industry side and flipping it on its head and introducing more understandable, more like layman's terms, ways of understanding data and making data literacy more accessible to people who may be not so well versed?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think especially, as they're going on that kind of learning journey, um, taking the time to kind of clearly explain the meanings of things. I mean, like you say, there is a lot of lingo, and even the lingo can vary depending on
You're
where
saying
you are. So
it.
sometimes people in the same domain can be talking to each other and not quite understand. So yeah, absolutely. I think that's key. I also think that it's keen to kind of listen to people as well and understand kind of their perspective on why they are doing things the way they're doing them, and not just presenting it as this is the right way to do it and the way that you've done it is wrong, but also trying to take some time to understand why people are doing the things they're doing.
Okay, cool. Maybe one last question. What role do you see data literacy in playing in the development and deployment of new technologies like AI, like we've talked about, but also like Internet of Things, that type of thing?
Yeah, so I think around AI, the better the data literacy of an organization, the better the data that they will generate, and therefore the better the AI can be. So people use that phrase like garbage in, garbage out, and you can within your data engineering or your machine learning model structure, you can apply a level of cleaning, but that can only kind of get you so far. So I think a really data literate organization will produce better data. And then on the flip side, we'll be able to make better decisions off of that data. We'll understand a bit more of the nuance of what they're seeing being reported. We'll be able to ask better questions and have better interactions, I think. And then in terms of the IoT side of things as well, I think there's a huge kind of opportunity for IoT to also generate some of that better data, where people are capturing information. Obviously that's relatively discrete activity, but getting in more and more IoT data from vehicles, from factories, from plants, gives a lot more opportunity for some really interesting AI and insight.
Cool. So for the rating, I think data literacy is obviously quite a broad subject. I mean, maybe if we dial it down to the importance of data literacy, how does that stack up in the cloud rating?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hugely important. I think if you think about some of the early things as an organization you might do with the cloud, maybe less dependent on data literacy. But if you as an organization are trying to transform, trying to do digital transformation, trying to be data driven or data enabled across the board, then it's incredibly important that the data literacy of the entire organization is understood and improved and developed over time. So I'd give that maybe a 7 out of 10.
7, yeah, I think that's fair. So AI comes out on top then for your score of the day, 8 out of 10. Nice, awesome. Okay, let's move on to my favorite part of the show, top of the ops. So it's quite a fun little bit of fun where Tim is gonna go and share with us his favorite cloud related or data related tech concept or practice ending in ops. There are so many to choose from these days. We've got green ops, rev ops, and live ops, which are a few that I heard recently. Tim, is there a favorite ops for you, and why is that so?
Well, I'm sort of tempted to say DevOps because I think it's
solid choice,
incredibly mature. But I'm going to say ML ops
Okay.
because I think it's just a very interesting area. Obviously, it's been talked about for a while. I think people recognized, quite a few years ago that there was a need for, creating a really good framework for deploying and monitoring and redeploying, retraining machine learning models. Lots of people have entered that market. There are some big players, the big cloud providers have got their offerings around ML ops, a lot of startups in that space. But I don't think anyone's really nailed it yet in terms of delivering the complete tool that's everything that a data science and, machine learning engineer would want. And so, I think there's some good tools out there that deliver some of what people would like, in different areas. Maybe some are stronger on providing sort of a playground or a development area for the data science machine learning practitioners to create their model. Some are stronger on the deployment front or the visibility front. But I don't think there's one that I've seen that really pulls all of that together as like a full stack kind of offering across the board. So I think it's a really interesting area and one to kind of keep an eye on to see if any one tool emerges as the de facto choice. Because I think at the moment different teams are using different mix of these tools, embellished with their own kind of in-house stuff. So and in terms of my background, being at Rolls-Royce, we when I was there, and this is going back a few years, we had a very sort of bespoke sort of framework for deploying our machine learning models. And I think some people are still kind of working that way, still kind of taking care of the ML ops side of things themselves.
How long has it been around for? When did you first hear about it even?
I think probably about 6 or 7 years ago, first heard about it. I think so I think it's better understood, and I think obviously that the tooling's improved, and I think that process is quite iterative. I've used a few different tools that kind of got developed by some of the cloud providers, and then they didn't really get the traction that they'd hoped for, and then they kind of retired them. So I think people, better understand, what ML ops is, the idea that you don't want to just deploy a machine learning model, and just hope for the best. You want to have something that's kind of monitoring that, making sure that it's not drifting too far, making sure that it's still, if there's some big, stochastic shock to the environment that it's operating in, or where the data is being generated, that it's still producing sensible results, even even if there's some financial crash, or all these kind of discrete events can turn your model from something that's behaving pretty well because it's trained on data that's pretty steady, and then all of a sudden the real life data being fed to it is quite drastically different. And then if you want to get the best out of your data scientists, and you don't want them to then have to retrain that model from scratch. So the idea that something could be monitoring can retrain that model based on more recent data, and then based on some rules that you've put in terms of its performance, can then decide whether that retrain model is appropriate for deployment, or whether actually someone does need to intervene and actually have a bit more of a look, because even once it's retrained, it's still not performing as well as you want. So I think it's moved forward in understanding, and it's just incrementally getting there. But I think there's like I say, still waiting on that on that MLOps tool that does everything for everyone.
Excellent. So MLOps, top of the ops for you today. Fantastic. Particularly pleased that you chose that one, because that's one I was personally particularly interested in learning more about. So thank you very much for sharing. So I guess that's a wrap for us today, guys. To those of you out there, thanks very much for tuning in. Hopefully, again, if not, please do check out the first episode. And we want to say thank you very much to Tim for sharing his expertise with us. We hope you enjoyed the show, and stay tuned for our next episode. We'll have yet another exciting guest. So don't forget to also like, share, and subscribe. A little cheesy plug there to the podcast, wherever, or YouTube, or wherever you're watching or listening at home, and follow us on social media as well. Lawrence Harvey LinkedIn, and my own LinkedIn, to stay up to date with the latest updates. So before we go, Tim, do you have any final thoughts or takeaways, a hot take, so to speak, for our listeners?
Hot take. I get one that's quite personal to me, I think, is I don't feel like people talk about optimizers enough. I think optimizers are a really interesting branch of AI. Machine learning gets all of the limelight, all of the headlines. I think optimizers are incredibly interesting and potentially very valuable. And in terms of cloud, very applicable, because when your optimization becomes a bit more involved, it starts to need some serious compute. So, I think people should be talking about optimizers, doing more optimizations. That's my hot take.
Well, there you go, folks. Well, Tim, thank you very, very much again for being our guest today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll hopefully see you again at some point in the future. And to everyone at home, thanks again for listening. Goodbye.